These days, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries. And with that, we sent away good jobs and our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make all kinds of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs in towns and cities across the country. And jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
He's in the building!
Drink the moment. Drink it.
I said empty your mind.
Coquettish and coy. Ow. Ow.
What?
Yeah, there's people that are dying.
The wickedly talented.
More than great. It was historic.
Crack is
World.
Oh, good for you.
I have to apologize.
One of the hottest.
Welcome back to The Reheat, a podcast that re-examines the wildest celebrity news and scandals of yesteryear and asks, how would we react to the same events if they transpired today? I'm Sarah Sahagian.
And I'm Sanaa Hassan, and this week is another hot off the press in which we talk about the wildest headlines we are obsessed with right now. But first, as we usually do, I'm going to run through just a couple of quickies, a couple things that have been happening. J.K. Rowling continues to be an anti-trans blowhard. I feel like that will never cease to be true. Wonderful man Pedro Pascal has been very much anti-JK this week, so that's kind of been the big thing. Meanwhile, Kanye, we got to mention Kanye because he's also constantly in the headlines. And he announced this week that he may have had an incestuous relationship with his cousin when he was young, which of course that's not consensual. And then he said a lot of other stuff, and he came at Kim again, and he's not well. He's not well. And that also continues to just always be the truth. So from there, and by the way, we will be doing deep dives on each of those folks very soon. So look out for that. But I want to cut to the juice here a little bit. So one of the biggest stories the last couple of weeks, we know it well. We saw Katy Perry, Gayle King, Lauren Sanchez, Jeff Bezos' girl, and more become the first Blue Origin all-female flight in space last week for a total of 11 minutes. That's right. I feel like not a lot of people know this. They were only in space for 11 minutes. Yeah. Despite so much of the world reminding them all how privileged and tone deaf this choice was. Because, by the way, to be 11 minutes in space, it takes a lot of money. Yeah. So these women said this was about female empowerment. I don't even know how to approach that. I simply cannot. But you know who said it best? Model Emily Ratajkowski. Yes. Her. She said, quote, "You say that you care about Mother Earth and it's about Mother Earth, and you go up in a spaceship that is built and paid for by a company that is single-handedly destroying the planet. Look at the state of the world and think about how many resources went into putting these women into space. For what?" Now, even Wendy's has been involved. It's been picking a delicious fight with Katy Perry, who, by the way, sang What a Wonderful World while she was up there. She didn't sing her own music. She sang What a Wonderful World. And she's been doing space choreography on her new tour. It's very terrible. Please go take a look. Yes, she's on tour. Who knew that? I don't know what she's performing. I don't know what's going on. Sarah, what do we make of this? Because I feel like you and I, if anything, our biggest takeaway from this is, what are you doing, Gayle King? We love you, Gayle King. Why would you do this?
Gayle King, you're still my queen, but please don't make more mistakes like this. It's not okay. It's not okay. You should know better, Gayle. I mean, I still love you, Gayle, but this is ridiculous. What's so funny is how they were feminist baiting. Like, they thought we would be like, this is a girl power moment. And no one thought that. Like, zero people thought that. Zero people thought, oh, yes, now little girls will know they, too, can go to space. Because it's not like they're actual astronauts, okay? Like, sending Katy Perry to space isn't helping women in STEM. So I just think it's funny the way they think women are so simple-minded that we would feel like this was a win for us and this would be good PR. that is my favorite part. Women are smart. We are not completely stupid. So obviously this backfired, obviously.
Deeply.
Now, I think Gayle King, my read on her is Gayle King likes experiences, right? When you get to the level of being like Gayle King, right? She has all the money she needs. Oprah is her best friend. It's very hard for her to find something that's novel, right? I mean, the experiences that we would love to have are just like a daily thing for her, like hanging out, drinking super expensive wine with Oprah. That's her daily. That's her daily.
Right.
So I feel like when you get to that point, short of going on Squid Game, right? Remember the really rich guy who's on Squid Game who's like, I'm bored. I had to do this. This is what you do.
Comparison. Oh, I like that reference. You know what? I hadn't thought about it that way. I really, really like that. Whereas I will say for like someone like a Lauren Sanchez, maybe this is about your 15 or your 11 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm really confused there. I mean, she had to support her man, I suppose. Here's the one thing I'll say for feminism. I liked their spacesuits, flared pants, well fitted. Not too
it was
chesty,
fashionable.
not too busty. It was fashionable.
Yeah. Okay. It was a good fashion moment.
It was a good fashion moment. Here's my thing. Even if it was just 11 minutes, it's just, I feel like it would take a lot of psychological preparation for me to want to do this as someone who does not know anything about space, has never been in space. Astronauts train for years and years and years just to spend one mission in space. These women spent how much time? I don't think they spent more than, generously, I'll say they spent a few weeks, but even then I doubt it. Like, yeah, maybe in total like a 10-minute chat. I would have been terrified. I feel like it's also a question of just safety if you're going up there and you've never done it before. It's just so mind-boggling to me. And here's what I will say, though, what I've been enjoying is that I feel like almost the entire world is disgusted and opposed to this. There's no detractor. There's nobody saying this is great and cool. And that never happens.
No, this was a pretty universal reaction. It's also just weird because this was a plot on the morning show. Remember when they sent Reese Witherspoon to space?
I never got to that point, dear God, and I'm glad.
Okay, there was John Hamm. Yeah, John Hamm, Elon Musk, because he was just playing Elon Musk.
Oh, dear God.
His company sends, it's supposed to be Jennifer Aniston, but then at the last minute she doesn't want to go. And fair enough, like it actually ended up being dangerous because like this, you know, John Hamm, Elon Musk is not good at his job, kind of like real Elon Musk.
Of course.
And so Reese goes and they almost die, but they don't. And but I was just sort of like, okay, sending Gayle King, it's like, did Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos like watch the morning show and are like, oh, good plot, like let's do this fan fiction for the morning show?
Oh my God. You know what? That is funny because typically it's reverse, right? That's so wild. How did that come true? Because that is an insane jump the shark morning show plot line. Dear God. Well, you know, I really have no words for it. I also think these women really ruined their legacies because this is going to be something that's stamped on there for a while. Katy Perry seems to be getting the brunt of the criticism because she's also, you know, a bit of a clown in general. She's the only one who's been talking about it so much. She's defended it very poorly. One thing I will suggest, go back and look at some of the interviews that she did before and after where she talks about the experience. She cannot say a complete sentence about it. That's not because she's a dumb lady. It's because she doesn't even know what went into it.
Yeah.
She doesn't know the mechanics around it. She doesn't know why it even happened. And she doesn't have a good PR log line around the meaning behind all of this and why they sent these women in. She didn't even try. Like, I will say Gayle's definitely been giving it a hard go where she's trying to explain it. And I feel like she believes, you know, Gayle really believes. Katy, on the other hand, does not have a damn clue, doesn't give a shit. Now she's on tour.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Gayle is very smart, and I feel like she's a good debater. So she's going to try to persuade people, including herself, right? I feel like she's also trying to persuade herself as much as anyone else. And it needs to go beyond for her just I wanted a new novel experience, right? And so she has to justify this in order to live with herself, I think, because this is not a dignified thing to do. And Gayle King otherwise is a very dignified lady. Like I love Gayle King. I really admire her. I have often said if I could be anyone in the world, I would be Gayle King. Like specifically Gayle King. I just love Gayle. I think she's so cool. I think she's undersung. But unfortunately, it's going to be really hard for me to beat the drum for Gayle King if she keeps doing stuff like this.
Now, what do you think Oprah said to her when she said, "Hey, Oprah, hey, buddy, hey, bestie, I'm going to go to space for 11 minutes"?
Question, do you think they asked Oprah first and she declined?
Oh, my God. Well, there's no doubt that she would decline.
Yes.
There's no doubt she declined.
Yes.
It would be so wild to ask Oprah. Oprah would never say yes. That's Oprah.
Well, it's one of those things where as Gayle's best friend, regardless of if they asked you and you declined or not, like, I don't know, but that's just my speculation that she may have declined. I feel like Oprah understands this was not going to go well, that this was going to be seen as really tone deaf. So as her best friend, shouldn't you be saying like, hey, bestie, don't go to space. A, it's dangerous. B, you're going to get lambasted in the press.
Yeah. I feel like she must have been like, this is such a wild, crazy opportunity, as you noted earlier, particularly for a rich, bored person, that Oprah felt like there was no way she simply had to just say, okay, great, have a good time. It was probably too far past the point for her to be able to say, I think this is a very bad idea, do not do it. That's speaking in friend context, but at Oprah Winfrey context, I feel like that lady could say at any time, this is a terrible idea, have someone else sub in, do not do this, just like Jennifer Aniston dropping out on the morning show. I think this is diabolical. I would be so disappointed in Oprah if she thought this was not a bad idea in her heart. I just can't buy it.
This is the type of thing I think Jenna Bush Hager should do, right? Like, I don't hate Jenna Bush Hager. Like, this is not me being like, I hate that woman. But I just feel like she probably doesn't think as critically about her decisions as Gayle King does, right? Like, they're just not on the same level. I'm not trying to hate on Jenna Bush Hager. Or is it Hagar?
Well,
I don't
know. A little bit. But also I do love that you're also throwing the whole name in there. Jenna Bush Hager would absolutely do this and should do this.
Yeah,
we're going to see something like this again. That's the other thing. I don't think this is it.
Well, Jenna Bush Hager can do it next time. You know she wants to. You know she wants to.
The entire Bush family. Like, I think that would be hilarious. And don't bring them back. Like,
don't bring them back. Just send them to space.
Just send them off to space. Anyway, we've got a lot more to discuss. We're going to take a little break. While we take this break, I encourage you to go watch a few videos of Katy Perry and her space choreography and have a good little time. And then come on right back.
One other piece of news that's been on my mind, particularly, is the rampant speculation around whether the Obamas are getting divorced. So this would be personally upsetting for me. And I know it's not about me because I am not married to Michelle Obama or Barack Obama, but this would really devastate me. So this is all because the former First Lady has not accompanied Barack to several high-profile events, including Donald Trump's inauguration and the funeral of former President Jimmy Carter. The second one is the one that I feel like is more telling because I feel like in protest, you might not want to go to Trump's inauguration. Obviously, Barack, because he's a former president, has to go, but there is some wiggle room for a former First Lady. So I feel like that could have been a carefully calibrated political statement on the part of the couple. But Jimmy Carter, I mean, that man is a beloved American hero, an icon for the Democrats, like one of the most universally approved figures in America at the time of his death. Not going to his funeral, I feel like makes it seem like you just can't stand your husband and you don't want to go with him, right? That's just how I saw it.
Because I felt the same way. I think it was definitely planned that she wouldn't go to the Trump inauguration. I think that was a great move.
Yeah.
Great way to subtly send out a message. But the Jimmy Carter funeral was quite shocking. And I'm not going to lie. When I heard that, I also kind of thought, wait a second, is shit going on behind closed doors? I'm sorry to say it. Knock on wood.
Yeah, well, it's just that you'd think that she personally would want to be there, right? As a Democrat and somebody who's devoted so much of her life to politics in that party, Jimmy Carter is also someone who did the same. And I'm sure that they met on several occasions. He was just, I know people who have met him, and you can also tell by his policies, he was just an incredibly lovely man. You'd think she'd want to be there because it's an important moment in history. And you'd think even if you didn't want to be there, you'd go out of a sense of duty unless you really didn't want to be with your husband at the time.
Yeah, I agree.
So that to me was telling. Michelle Obama also recently went on Sophia Bush's podcast, Work in Progress, which is such a weird place to go to discuss your marriage. Like, this is beneath Michelle. No offense to Sophia. But if you're going to go discuss your marriage and give someone the scoop, like, have higher standards for yourself. You're Michelle friggin' Obama. So anyway, she went.
Totally agree.
At least call her daddy. Like, come on.
Oh, no.
No, I know, not call her daddy.
I think we are not far from that, but carry on. We'll get back into that.
I know. Anyway, so she went on this podcast hosted by the One Tree Hill alum, which is Sophia's most prestigious credit.
Chicago Fire.
Okay, Chicago Fire. Okay. Maybe Michelle was a big fan of that show, and that's why she wanted to go on this podcast. But Michelle Obama said, people couldn't even fathom that I was making a choice for myself, that they had to assume that my husband and I are divorcing, that I couldn't be a grown woman just making a set of decisions for herself, right? But that's what society does to us. I chose to do what was best for me, not what I had to do, not what I thought other people wanted me to do. So that's how she defends not going to the Trump inauguration and the Carter funeral. She brought up divorce herself. Like, Sophia didn't say, are you guys getting divorced? Sophia's not a real journalist, so she didn't ask the hard-hitting questions. Michelle brought it up. She raised the specter of divorce. A lot of people have said that that's a little bit telling. For the record, Michelle is actually very, very busy, and in kind of an unexpected way, she launched her own podcast, IMO, with her brother Craig last month, and has been doing the general podcast circuit. So Sadaf, what do you think is the truth of the rumors? I mean, Barack himself has also said that there is a deficit in their marriage, or there was, because he was president, and that took away a lot. And this isn't the first time Michelle has said that her marriage wasn't perfect. Like, since sort of 2022, she's been saying things like, for a decade, I couldn't stand my husband. It was really hard. I was giving more to our marriage when he was president and when our kids were young. Not even just when he was president, but when our kids were young, which is very relatable. But do you think their marriage is in trouble?
That is a really good reference, because I almost forgot a little bit about that. Like, she's been relatively open, which is so shocking to me. You don't expect that from your average celebrity. To get that from a former first lady is kind of wild, which actually makes me think the opposite. I actually believe her because she's been so open. But here's what I will say. I find her current personal life or professional life so fascinating. Like, okay, get a podcast, I guess. Like, it's not a thing you'd expect from a first lady. I have listened to a few episodes. I've been enjoying it. It's not bad. The Tracy Ellis Ross episode last week was wonderful. That's also because I love Tracy Ellis Ross. No shade against Michelle. I think her and her brother are an adorable duo, but it's not what I would expect. I mean, I know she wrote a book a couple years ago, but I'm like, what else is on your plate, Michelle? What else is going on? I want more for you. She had a whole life and a career before Barack became president. And one of the things that I always think about when it comes to election season is the first lady, and it's often a first lady, is really putting her life aside entirely for her husband's career. And I think that's kind of devastating. Like, I wonder, what is the psychology behind that? What are you left with? Because there's got to be a little bit of, it's got to be very hard in a marriage. It's got to be very hard for you. Now she's trying to rediscover, rebuild without that. And I don't know that it's going all that well. It's not going badly. I just don't really know which direction it's taking. And maybe part of that is taking a step back from a lot of these events. But I agree that Jimmy Carter one still kind of leaves me side-eyeing. But again, they've been very honest. Like, it hasn't been perfect. Why would it be after all of that? That's a lot to go through. Like, I would think that there's a bit of trauma involved in that alone, just going through a presidency together, right? I don't know.
I think so. I mean, the kind of thing she had to do, there is a
Yeah.
story she tells where she had to go to her daughter's parent-teacher interviews at their school Sidwell Friends. And because, you know, anytime the president and the first lady go anywhere, you have to have like essentially snipers on the roof, right? There were Secret Service people and snipers on the roof and all these things. And I mean, her daughters were kind of uncomfortable and embarrassed. And I have so much sympathy for them. Like that must have been hell, like going through that as kids growing up that way.
Oh my God, yeah.
And she just had to say to them, you know what, this is normal, and just walk right in. Like the amount of time she had to essentially lie to her children just to help them get through the day, probably as a mother would be really hard. And then you have to devote your professional life to your husband, because being first lady is an unpaid position and you don't have full control over what you get to do. You're a professional helpmeet. And this is a highly educated professional woman who's fiercely intelligent, and you're being a professional wife, right? For the fact that this is an unpaid position, to me, is very Handmaid's Tale. Like, why is this still an unpaid position? Why is the president's wife expected to do anything, right, for him other than, you know, just hang out with him if she wants to, because that's what married people do? Like, it's ridiculous. And so the expectations that were placed on her as the first Black first lady were also incredibly high. And so there was a lot of pressure. She was under additional scrutiny. It's already hard to be first lady, right? Every first lady says that, if they speak candidly, that it's hard to be the first lady. But being the first racialized first lady is even harder. And then add on top of that the fact that this is a ridiculous job, and Michelle Obama is smart enough to know that, right? That you have to do this ridiculous job, and you've got to raise your kids while doing this ridiculous job. I agree with you. I think it was probably traumatic. I think that's the right word. I think very few of us can relate to what she went through. It would be incredibly difficult. And I understand if she wants some time for herself. I would also understand if the marriage is beyond repair at this point, right? I would understand if she feels like there isn't enough there, right? Because for 8 years, you were gone, you had the weight of the world literally on your shoulders, but I had the weight of supporting you. And that was really important. And it's being the first lady. I wouldn't say it's exactly thankless, but it's not like being the president, right? Like it's not the same. And when you have two highly educated, highly intelligent people who have, you know, very similar potential, right? You know, they had similar educational backgrounds. They're both incredibly intelligent. And then one person gets to be president and one person gets to be first lady. I don't know if I could get over that resentment easily. What about you?
Oh my God, I could never do it. And I have thought about it before. I could never do it, Sarah. I would have so much resentment. I would not be willing to give up my career, because that's also not just your career. It's really your life as you know it. And as you said, you really become entirely dedicated to that person in every way. It's nonstop. I couldn't do it. And on top of that, them being a Black family in the White House, like that alone must have been so difficult. And as you said, so much scrutiny from the press, from the public, then from the House itself. It's just so much. So I should say, I want to rephrase a little bit and say, you know, as much as I'm side-eyeing her podcast future choice, I do think it's so great that she's exploring what works for her and what are the options now for her, because it's not like she's being a lawyer. That's the other thing. She can't really do that. She's a very famous person. She cannot do it. They still have Secret Service following them around. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, I'm with you. There's got to be some level of resentment, I have to assume, no matter how well adjusted you are. And I do think she's a very hot woman. She's very beautiful. She's got those arms we've been talking about for years. If she wanted to get back out there, she certainly could. And so could Barack. That is a sexy man. They would both have no problem if that's what they wanted to. Here's the thing that I'd be curious about, how they feel it could affect their respective brands. I don't think for Barack it matters quite so much. I don't think he's someone who's really volleying for a whole new career, but Michelle certainly is. She's aiming to be in the spotlight to some degree, but I actually think that it could work very well for her, because it would be something new. She's been so candid already about the relationship. It would be interesting to hear about a first lady going through divorce, particularly this first lady. But Let's see. Knock on wood again.
That would be, is that the first time in history? I think that would be the first time in American history. Don't quote me on this. I'd have to look this up. That a first lady would have divorced a president, like a former first lady would have divorced a president.
I can't think of one.
I don't think it's ever happened before. I don't think they're going to get divorced. I mean, it's just what I think is so upsetting, and I have no right to be upset by this, is that for a long time, the media, especially, the media that I am familiar with, the more sort of liberal media that likes the Obamas, not like Fox News, held them up as the ideal couple, right? They were super happily married. And that was the part that they played strategically, probably, while he was president. You kind of have to do that. You have to play that part. And I literally remember when I was in my 20s and I was dating and I was talking about what I wanted in a relationship, my mom saying to me, Sarah, you got to lower your expectations. No one has what Barack and Michelle Obama have. Only they have that. Like, that was her romantic ideal as well as mine. She's like, you can't shoot for that. That's not realistic. And now in the 2020s, they're telling us that even they don't have that that's an illusion, that marriage is hard. And one thing Michelle has said that I actually really like, if you are a person who believes in marriage, and not everyone does, and it's okay if you don't, because, marriage is hard. But one thing she said that I think is very realistic is that they've been married for 30 years and they had 10 bad years. But for her, it's worth it. And I think that's realistic. Like, if you are the type of person who thinks that, like, marriage is for life, you just have to eat the fact that you're going to have entire years, and I guess maybe even a decade, that sucks. And that's part of the process. And that's not something everyone wants. And I totally respect that. But I like that she's telling people, like, marriage is hard, guys, right? Like, it's not easy. And even if they stay with it, even for people who are married forever and are glad over all that they did, there are times that are really, really tough. And I don't think they're going to get divorced, because I feel like they are very committed to their family unit, even if they, more than anything, right? They want to be there for their daughters. They want to be grandparents together. I think at a certain point, when you become as famous as they are, your marriage is an institution more than it is a relationship. Yeah. And I think they're committed to that institution. And who knows? Like, maybe they'll explore. I mean, I don't think they would openly have an open marriage, but maybe
be open. Yeah.
No.
I think I can see that too. I can see them maybe being open privately, or like just kind of having like separate lovers or something.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it would be very low key, which in a way I also find quite beautiful. They're very much like the most modern presidential couple we've really ever had. So, and I think you're right. It is the best thing. I love your point. They are an institution, and I think they see that, they know how much it matters to people. And again, I do think they're very aware of what their branding is. And just generally speaking, political couples, and this comes to our Canadian prime ministers too, it's not a good look when you split. It wasn't good for Justin Trudeau and Sophie Gregoire. It's never good to go into office as a single person. It's not good to leave office as a single person. And that is because people really care about family values. I'm not saying that I agree that that's a good thing, but that is how politics work. So I can see them just sticking together regardless. I just hope that they find things that make them happy. And it looks like Michelle is. We root for you, Michelle. That's the bottom line. We root for you.
We root for you. We'll listen to your podcast. We will read any book you ever publish. Honestly, you're a great writer. So is Barack, but I prefer her books. If I had to choose, if you made me choose.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you know what's funny? I read her book. I didn't even read his book. I read one of her books. I didn't read any of his. So that says a lot.
You know what it is? She's a better storyteller. And I think they're both great. And obviously they're both brilliant. I just think when you read her books, you appreciate that they're brilliant in different ways, right? And many couples are. And I think that she's an amazing storyteller. So I'm glad she's doing podcasting. I'm glad she's committed to storytelling, and their production company, I think, is a good avenue for her to explore storytelling. So I'm glad that in this season of her life, she gets to lean into the things that really make her incredibly special as a person. I mean, and you're right. If she left him, I think there would be tons of men beating down her door. I think she'd be married to a billionaire in a year. I think she is really sexy. I agree. But I think that have you watched his show on National Parks?
No, I don't even think I knew he had one.
Barack is very attractive, but I feel like going on a date with him, he would be the guy who'd be like, and now let me tell you about national parks, right? Like, I don't know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Cap this episode off. I'm going to turn to something that may be a little bit more unexpected and certainly a bit of a sharp pivot here. But I want to talk about Pope Francis, okay? I know you all are well aware we lost him very recently. Yet another very compassionate political figure who we've lost recently, which makes it, it's been a tough few years, guys. But mainly I want to talk about the movie Conclave, whose biggest fan may be our very own Sarah Sahagian. Now, for the first time ever, the pop culture world is invested in the Conclave and how it will choose the next pope because of this wonderful movie that came out quite recently. It was a big Oscar heavy hitter. I'm sure a lot of you saw it. If you haven't, very conveniently, it is currently on Amazon Prime, recently hit the streamer, so go check it out. Vulture even put together a really fun side-by-side comparison of which real-life papal candidates might compare to the films. Personally, what's thrilling to me is the way that we may, for the first time ever, have a Filipino pope. I really hope that happens. Now, Sarah, you've got to be salivating over all of this. I need to know all of your thoughts. Tell us what you're thinking.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, if this, I'm glad that we had as much time with Pope Francis as we did. I'm not Catholic, but I did think he was a really important progressive voice for the church. I really love his quote about how he hopes hell is empty. I think this is a man who really embodies the spirit of forgiveness, which is supposed to be important to Christianity, but a lot of Christians forget that. So I think that he was, a humble person. When he was a cardinal, he used to take public transit. He was a good advocate for people who were living in poverty. I felt like by Catholic Church standards, he was a reformer. I mean, let's face it, there was not as much form as like I would have done had I been Pope. But like had I been Pope, because I am a woman and also not Catholic, the Catholic Church would be in such a progressive place.
Of course. That's a separate issue altogether.
Separate issue. Because I don't think Francis, in my opinion, did a good enough job on feminist issues. But that's, I mean, none of them do. Yeah. But honestly, I am so happy that now more people are watching Conclave. That was my favorite movie of 2024. I have been raving about it. Had this happened sooner, I'm glad it didn't. But had it happened sooner, I think it would have won Best Picture. Because I think more people would have watched it. It's exquisitely made. Edward Berger is the director. And as much as I loved Honora, and I think Honora is great, I do think that Conclave is a crowd pleaser because it's a thriller, but it's also about important theological issues. Like, it's kind of like putting cheese on broccoli or chocolate on a strawberry. It's nutritious, but it's also really insanely delicious, right? So it's an amazing movie. It has fantastic monologues, great performances, and that ending says so much about the Catholic Church and how it needs to evolve, right? That ending is really important, and I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but it's one of the best surprise endings since The Sixth Sense, and I'm not trying to oversell it, but it really it's so thought-provoking and such a good surprise. And also, my man Stanley Tucci is in it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. As a progressive pope who wants women to play a more active role in the church. Sorry, a progressive cardinal, not a progressive pope. My man Ray Fiennes is in it. He's another one of my men.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking hot.
Looking hot. Like, just such... It's a murderer's row. Like, it's an embarrassment of riches, this cast. Like, this is just, you've got to see it if you have not already seen it. Isabella Rossellini is in it.
Yeah, wonderful.
Go see this movie if you have not. What do you think, Sadaf? Did you love Conclave as much as I did?
I didn't love it as much as you did. But by the way, I do think first of all, I think it's really beautifully made. It's so well made. It's gorgeous. I think it's also a really wonderful, unique premise. We haven't had something like that. I've never seen something quite like that.
No.
And I love the way they took it into a different genre that you wouldn't expect. Love the cast so deeply. I did think it was a great movie. It wasn't my favorite of the year. Shout out The Substance. I still think The Substance was the greatest we got last year. But for me, I think what's so fascinating is the way that it's predicted something. It came out first, and now we just similarly discussed how the morning show seemed to predict this space flight, and now we have Conclave predicting the Pope. The timing is wild. I feel like this past year films we had were very political in so many unexpected ways, and this is a really good example of that. If you want more context for what's happening right now involving Pope Francis and this new selection for the next guy, I think it's a good movie to watch just for that, because I didn't know how any of that stuff works. I'm very uneducated in all of that. I'm Muslim. I don't know any of that stuff. I didn't have a clue. So it was really interesting finding out. Here's a fun fact too, though, or fun thing that I found it quite campy, and I love camp. I found it quite campy. It felt queer, that movie. And yeah, I want to say more, but I don't want to drop any spoilers.
And a lot of people have said this, that there is the homophobia, the historic homophobia of the Catholic Church is so bizarre, because there definitely is a campiness to Catholic rituals, right? The men wear dresses, right? The robes are essentially dresses. It is actually pretty gender fluid already, the performance of gender, right? They wear like gold shoes and accessories, right? It does, like, they basically dress like Elton John. And I'm not saying that to be anti-Catholic, because there's nothing wrong with dressing like Elton John. It just makes the homophobia even more bizarre, right? Where you're out there and you're like, my fashion icon is basically Liberace, and it's like, but I'm homophobic. So it's obviously the Catholic.
Dare I say the Conclave is very homoerotic?
Yes, that is true. It is, and we know, historians of sexuality know, that there have been priests who, I mean, we know that there's been non-consensual sex in the church, but there also has been a lot of consensual queer relationships between priests and cardinals, and history tells us that. So the Catholic Church, its stance on gay people and queer people in general is very hypocritical.
My God.
Exactly. And this movie, I think, shows that without explicitly telling you that. It's not too heavy-handed, but it does point out the absurdity of that, and it is campy and delicious. It also talks about the fact that there are these non-consensual relationships, because there is one cardinal who almost becomes pope, and then it turns out that he had a relationship with a nun that he claims was consensual, but judging by her reaction to him, seems like it likely wasn't, or it might not have been, right? There is that kind of thing. And what I love about this movie is it is so complicated, and it doesn't make it easy for you. It leaves a lot of things open for interpretation.
I completely agree. I actually kind of want to watch it again now, because I think I want to go into it a little more calmly and a little more with this whole new context. And again, because you really don't see the twist coming. But yeah, go check it out. It's on Amazon Prime right now. Let us know which pope you're rooting for. Who do you want to get in there?
Who do you want to win?
I want a Filipino pope.
Me too.
This is our Super Bowl, okay? Like, I can't wait to know.
It's like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. It's like, who's gonna win? Well, it is just like The Bachelorette, right? Or The Bachelor. Like, you're choosing the winner. There can only be one.
Yes.
Everyone is in theory in contention, but we know not everyone's in contention, right?
There you go.
It is like a reality show. It was the original reality show. Every reality show is basically modeled on the Conclave, whether we as a society accept that or not.
Oh my God, that's funny. Now, listen, thank you to all of you gorgeous listeners. You can catch The Reheat for free on the Seeker app. You can also find the show on the Frequency Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to hear more from me, you can find me on Twitter at _Stephason. Sarah, where can our listeners find you?
Listeners can find me on Instagram at Sahagian Sarah. I'm also now on Blue Sky, so check out Sarah Sahagian on Blue Sky. I would love more followers. I think I have 7. I'm new to Blue Sky.
I've got to get on there. I'll give you a follow.
Okay, thank you. And I'll follow you back, obviously. Okay. So if you liked this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe so other listeners can find us too. And if you would like us to keep growing, we would love for you to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thereheat, where we've got some goods in store for you. Thanks for listening.